Hey guys, Lydia here from Build Yourself Inside, and I thought you all could use this video, and I really feel like this is probably the number one struggle I see with most people and why they have a problem with creating a healthier and more productive life for themselves. Why is it you have a problem with getting over like things that are comfortable, things that are tasty? What happens is, over time, as we're growing up into adulthood, our minds tend to pick up what feels good to us, what tastes good to us, what makes us feel safe. And these are just neural pathways that are built over time. And I'm not going to go into the science about this because I know that doesn't interest a lot of you. It does help to know, and it does help to know a lot of that stuff, because then you can actually really scientifically learn how to reprogram yourself. But what I want to share with you guys is a simple tip and tactic that I use for myself. I teach my clients how to, I teach my clients this tactic because it is a super powerful way to changing your neurology. And that's actually what you're doing when you're creating a new habit, whether it's a bad habit or a good habit. You're actually structuring, and you're creating a new, you're changing your neurology to basically telling your mind that, oh, this feels good when I feel like this. So a cigarette feels good when I feel depressed, or this type of food, this donut feels good when I feel like I feel low on energy. We start generating these basically associations. We start creating an association to get ourselves out of a negative state. And that's how addictions and bad habits form. And you've probably read a lot of things online, like you can create an addiction out of anything, right? Like people will drink things that are toxic, people will like peel their skin, or they'll just do it, like they'll pick their hair, right? Like there's so many bizarre addictions you can create. But the thing is, an addiction can be anything that will help that person out of a threatening or painful state. That's the important thing to remember here. So I want you to all think about, maybe you all have an addiction. Go ahead and type below. Maybe you guys share like some of the same addictions or bad behaviors. Like here's one of mine, I've had ever since I was a teenager, was a way for me to handle sadness, depression, and like a feeling of overwhelmness. Was what I would do is immediately break with whatever I was doing and go right to my fridge. Like that was my unconscious habit. That was my way of dealing with those feelings of like being scared or just like depression, right? Like we all handle our negative emotions in certain ways, and a lot of us have another behavior to replace those feelings. And some of you may not be aware of that. So think back right now to maybe a time today or a time this week that you felt like you had to escape something. You had to escape like pain, or you had to escape boredom, or you had to escape maybe like a fear that you were having. And I mean, it can be a very subtle fear. It can be a fear of like, maybe you woke up without some milk this morning. Like maybe your husband, your wife drank all the milk, and your fear is that there's no milk left in the house. So you begin to kind of manifest already an attitude, right? Like these things happen so subtly. Do you see what I mean? You could wake up, or you could have a threat that, like, you might anticipate something. You might anticipate like a fight with your boss or a fight with a coworker at work, and then already that puts you in that negative state. And you might turn to like a cigarette or something else for just stress relief, or you might stop at Starbucks to get your coffee, something that you know will give you that, right? But what it actually does, and here's the illusion, is that this is what I recently explained to one of my clients, and I actually drew out a chart, and is that what actually, sorry, my phone just rang. I just had to decline it because this is important. So back to what I was saying, what actually happens when you're satisfying like a negative state with an addiction is you're actually, all you're doing is spiking your dopamine, right? Like you're just getting kind of like this pseudo dopamine fix, and you drop right back to whatever state you're in afterwards, right? So after that dopamine, after you've metabolized that, you go right back down to your normal habitual, your regular state of anxiety or depression or whatever negative state you kind of hang in all the time. The state that you're escaping from is the state you go right back to after your quick dopamine fix. So whether it's a donut, a pint of ice cream, a cigarette, it could be telling somebody off or how to run their life. It could be being submissive to somebody. Like there's a lot of addictions that we have, a lot of very subtle ones. It could be like having an argument. That could be a way that a lot of people handle their negative emotions, right? There's a lot of things we do, and this doesn't this doesn't just involve eating things and cigarettes and drugs, right? We all handle negative emotions such as anxiety, depression, fear, by maybe taking other people down with us, starting arguments, like I said, telling people what to do, how to run their life, boosting your own ego, right? These are all different ways for us to escape and feel better about ourselves. But what we're actually doing is giving ourselves a temporary burst of dopamine, which falls right back to the state, momentarily that you were in to begin with. So what you actually see is that you're actually not moving from your state. You're just creating sort of like a temporary high. And we all know that, right? But a lot of us actually don't really understand what's chemically happening. So when, I've been reading a lot about like hormones and, how things change actually chemically in our body, and how we get addicted to what we get addicted to. So how do we go about fixing this, right? That's why you're all tuned in here. You're like, okay, what is this magic secret? What is this thing that you do? And what it really came down to, what a lot of people don't seem to know, is that to handle an addiction, to satisfy an addiction, actually I don't like that word. Let's handle, to overcome an addiction, to clear an addiction, you don't need something to replace it. You don't need to give into it. If you have a craving for something, you don't need to give into the craving in order for it to go away. In fact, it actually ignites more cravings, right? Because as soon as you get that dopamine fix, you drop back down, your cravings are back, right? So it's kind of like this endless cycle, and actually doesn't help you at all. And understanding this can really, and when you start to do the math and understand that actually really, after you handle your negative emotion with whatever temporary relief that you have, you're actually right back to where you started. So and I kind of did the math after I realized going to my fridge and opening a jar of peanut butter, or eating at all was satisfying a feeling of overwhelm. So it didn't even have to be junk food. I could just pick at anything, and that could distract me from whatever was going on. So let's get right back to the strategy. A great way to start restructuring your own neurology to kind of begin creating a new habit. And I feel like this is easier than just telling yourself and slapping yourself on the wrist saying, okay, you're not going to do it. You're not going to have that cake. You're not going to have that cigarette, right? We're going to do this. We're going to use positive self-talk, and we're going to do it, right? We all tend to do this. And what happens is that creates a worse situation, because then a lot of times we end up disappointing ourselves, right? And when we disappoint ourselves, we create an intense cortisol reaction, which makes us feel even worse, right? So we go from here to going like here, when, we're using kind of like these strategies that don't work, right? So we put ourselves in more of a stress situation when we don't follow up with our own goals, with our integrity, right? We create more stress on ourselves, and that's why it's extremely self-destructive, this cycle that we end up going in with these bad habits. And like I said, they can involve other people as well. So what's really the way you can start doing this in order to create a permanent change in your behavior is to first, of course, you have to recognize where it's happening, right? Like, okay, you're craving sex right now, or you're craving, you gotta look at your phone, or you gotta look at Facebook, or you gotta call your friends, maybe you need attention, or you feel like you need somebody to let your emotions out, right? Like there's something, these things are so, like I said, so very subtle. How many addictions do you have, right? How many of us feel the urge to look at our phone, the urge to look at Facebook, the urge to check our email, the urge to call somebody, the urge to eat something, to go to the gym, to have a cigarette, to go for a drive, to let out stress, right? These are all ways we kind of replace that negative state. But what happens is a lot of these tend to be more self-destructive than they are useful. So what I tell my clients is when you feel that starting to come on, right? Like you start to have thoughts, you start to have maybe some anxiety, your breathing changes, right? Very, very subtle physiological changes. I tell them, first of all, journaling helps a lot. So when you're journaling this, and then to delay it. Instead of immediately taking action, delay it. And just notice what's going on. Notice what's going on physiologically. What's going on internally. Like, is your heart rate speeding up? Are your muscles starting to get tense? Are your thoughts starting to race? Like, are you starting to want to get up to do something? Just notice it, and just delay it. Delay it by, like, it really depends what it is. If it's something as simple as like a cigarette or something, I would say delay it by like 10 minutes. See if you still want it later. If it's something like anger, I'd say, what? Delay it by like an hour. You're not telling yourself that, hey, you're never gonna be able to deal with this and you're gonna suppress it, right? The worst thing to do is suppress anything. But there's a period called the refractory period where you just cannot be influenced no matter what, right? So here's an example of this. If you just had something really bad happen to you, maybe you just had a car accident, and for the next 10 or 20 minutes, no matter what anybody says to you or does for you, you're just angry no matter what. Like, somebody might say, hey, you know what, we'll get the car fixed, but you're still like, God damn it, this should not happen, right? Like, you're still in that period where nothing can change the way you feel or think. And when you're in a refractory period, it's really hard to be able to control yourself. And this is across the board. This is for everybody. This is just the way we're wired. So what I tell people is just don't tell yourself that you're not going to be able to handle this. Just delay it and see if that craving is still there in 20 minutes or an hour. And what you'll tend to notice is that actually the more you focus on something and you just actually don't satisfy it, right? You don't need, like I said, you don't need to satisfy a craving in order for it to go away. That actually has the opposite effect. It's very counterintuitive. Like most things at work are very counterintuitive, right? So try this out and notice where you feel like an urge to do something all of a sudden. Maybe you have the urge to hear from somebody or text somebody or to look at something or turn on the television or go eat. Whatever it is, just hang back and just analyze what's going on in your head, what's going on in your body, what's going on like around you. Are you like, what is going on? And what actually tends to happen if you do this right and you don't actually do the action, you don't cave in, right, is that it actually dissipates. It actually will go away. And the beauty about this is that this opens a new neural pathway for your brain to be able to make new connections to handling a future negative emotion. But the problem is, we're adults now, and it's harder to do this. It takes more repetition to be able to to make this a solid thing. But it is totally possible. I've done it myself with my own habits. There's NLP, neuro-linguistic programming techniques that actually help you fix this like that I used on myself. Called reframing. Reframing is a very powerful technique, and I love to use this on my own clients, reframing and anchoring, but we're not going to go into that here because a lot of you hardly even know what I'm talking about. But for those of you who want to just start doing something on your own, try this out, and I would love to hear about how it helps you or if it worked for you. And like I said, this will create permanent change down the road the more you enforce this. So here's another area I use this, and I'm actually really excited. So I'm used to like splurging at Vitamin Shop on the most expensive protein powders, and I give myself the excuse that like it's part of my diet. I have the right to blah blah blah, and I'm just rationalizing my way out of like an enormous amount of money I'm about to put down. And when you start to notice that where you have these areas of impulse, and you kind of just hang back and you watch it, like I even now when I talk about it, I feel like the excitement, I feel like the dopamine rise, I feel like, oh my God, I feel this high. And I actually didn't go for it. I didn't buy the $50 bottle of protein powder. I actually bought the cheaper $32, $37 one. And I walked out like, holy shit, I've never done that before. That's amazing. Like for me, because my spending habits, I knew were out of control. And this is a great thing to do if you're like me and you gotta have this, you gotta have that, the new gadget, this, the new, for clothes, and especially if you're like me and you eat a lot. And you want all the high quality stuff, sometimes you have to sacrifice, right? So I needed to wrap my head around, okay, I need to start saving money in order to put more towards my business. So I just noticed myself in Vitamin Shop, just getting excited, and I was like, and then when all that faded away, because it will, that dopamine excitement will fall, and that's right when you're back to where you started. I noticed I'm like, I could think more rationally, I could think more logically and pragmatic. And I made the right decision, the decision that would actually help me in the future rather than at the moment. And I literally walked out of Vitamin Shop really excited that I overcame this. And what ends up happening is like, now you're paving a road, now you're paving a new pathway for your brain to think, rather than just immediately giving in and giving in and giving in and giving in and being stuck in this vicious cycle. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. And I would love to hear about, if you use this, comment back and or private message me. I would love to hear about your successes. Always am excited. And hit me back. You can follow my blog. Also, I will be uploading this on my blog as well at buildyourselfinside.com, all one word. That link is below. And I hope you found this useful. If you have, please give me a like or a little heart. And I will talk to you guys very soon. Good night now.